This is the new Microsoft Surface Book with Performance Base, looking almost identical to the last gen Surface Book, the magnesium clad 2-in-1 that Microsoft was touting as the ultimate computer. And we really liked the first gen. Thought it showed a lot of promise, but it was lacking some things, both hardware and software, that we thought future iterations would improve on. Well, we've got it here. In this Performance Base, you've got bigger batteries, faster processor, you've got an improved video card, things that ordinarily make a laptop seem faster. And I was really excited to test this, and I figured, what better way to test a computer than to actually use a computer? So I took some advice for myself, and I tested it the way I do with phones. I used this as my only computer for the better part of a week. I unplugged my 5K iMac, set this up with the dock and 2 monitors, and got to work using this as I needed to use a computer throughout the days. And beyond that, took it home with me and used it as my home computer as well. This is my only computing that I've been using. And I want to share my thoughts with you, whether or not I'm going to keep using it, and most importantly, should you consider buying a Microsoft Surface Book. So any review of the Surface Book, I think should start with the design, since that's a big chunk of what you're paying for. And for this version, you're going to be paying a lot. This is a $3,300 fully loaded version Microsoft sent us. So the big story here is not necessarily the magnesium body, which looks and feels really nice. It's the hinge. And the hinge is different. Right off the bat, you can tell it's not your typical clamshell laptop. As you go and open it up, it kind of unfurls like a rug. And one of the issues we had last gen was that I couldn't quite open it with one finger. So let's see if that's been fixed this time around. Not quite, but the opening is still really cool. And as it unfurls, you're greeted with now the traditional laptop look. But with that kind of cool hinge, there are some downsides. First, you've got that gap, which allows dust or papers to get in there. Although with the Performance Base, it is much smaller because the base is bigger for the batteries and presumably for the extra GPU horsepower. If you're not familiar with the Surface Book, it detached into 2 separate pieces. You got the clipboard and you've got the Performance Base, and it does it in kind of a cool way. Push the button next to the delete key. You get an audible unlock noise, which is actually just being piped through the speakers, and this part comes off completely. And this part, Microsoft calls a clipboard, actually houses almost your entire PC. It's got your Core i7, your RAM, and a smaller battery. Houses the Performance Base, way more batteries that people talk about, and the dedicated GPU. Generally just using the clipboard, I got about 2 hours of battery life, and it connects via 5 pins on the bottom. The 2 on the left and the right are just for connection, and the 3 are for actually transferring data. Although the middle one, you can actually use the charger that comes with the computer to charge it on its own. But it will not charge itself with the Performance Base without being plugged in. So if you want to charge this has to be plugged in. When you plug things back in though, it does recognize it really quickly, which is an improvement over last generation. And you can plug it in a few different ways. You can plug it in normally like a laptop, or turn it around, put it in its dock, and you could use it as a presentation mode. It's great for airplanes, for watching movies, or you can always fold it down and use it as a heavy 3.63 pound tablet. The keyboard on the original Surface Book was one of the best laptop keyboards I've ever tested. I loved the throw on it. Unfortunately, Microsoft didn't change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It is a really good typing experience. And the glass trackpad is still amongst the best glass trackpads that I have ever used. It feels a little bit different texture-wise when you get on something like a MacBook Pro, but it works equally well. If you are worried about scrolling, how smoothly it's going to be with 2-finger scrolling, don't be. It also supports multi-touch gestures. It's a really weird time for I/O or input-output. Everything's clearly moving to the combo port of USB Type-C and Thunderbolt 3, but nothing's really there yet. So you look at a new computer and you're like, yeah, it's good, but is it future-proof? And that's a question to ask yourself with the Surface Book. And it's got a pretty generous I/O. On the left-hand side, you've got 2 USB Type-A ports, or just traditional USB, a really shallow SD card reader, but you do have an SD card reader here. On the opposite side, you've got mini DisplayPort, and you've got Microsoft's proprietary Surface Charger or dock port, and it's magnetic, not unlike MagSafe. And that's where everything's gonna kind of plug in from the accessory front. But no USB-C here, and it's kind of hard to knock a computer for not having it. Well, I'm knocking some computers for having too many USB-C ports. If it's important to you, no, this doesn't have it, but at least right now, it's not really a deal breaker for me. But it may be in about 12 months. Performance is what matters with the Surface Book. And again, with this being the full top-of-the-line spec'd Surface Book, including the GTX 965M with 2 gigs of DDR5 memory, you expect it to be fast. Performance is also the reason that we ended up returning our first-gen Surface Book. I couldn't handle the editing load that we were putting on it at a big show like CES. So I had Ron Pareda come give it a shot on Premiere Pro, and happy to report the results were very different than what we saw just about a year ago. 4K scrubbing was very smooth. Rendering was very fast. In fact, Ron said it was on par with his 5K iMac and faster than his spec to the gills 2015 MacBook Pro. So this solved the fundamental problem we had again with last gen. We could use this as an editing powerhouse, and it worked well. It's not going to replace a desktop by any stretch of the imagination, but it works extremely well. And Adobe's kind of tight-lipped about what they use most with their suite of software, whether or not it's really heavily GPU-based or CPU-based or a combination of both. Whatever it is, Microsoft really has optimized the software and the hardware to hum along smoothly with Adobe Suite. And if you want to see a full video on how the Surface Book performs with editing, let us know. We'll have Ron or Andrew make a full video showing you how it performs. But if you want to know if you can use it as an editing machine, in fact, making this even more impressive was the smooth performance was even when the computer was docked to 2 separate monitors. And testing this as my everyday computer, I didn't have that much time to push it with gaming. We plan on doing a follow-up gaming dedicated video, but I did try some StarCraft 2, which is my vice when I take a few minute breaks here, and it worked really well. And obviously it's not the most graphics intensive game, but I easily pushed it to 50 frames per second at 1080p, and I probably could have even gone higher, and it was buttery smooth. Another knock we had on the last gen was the SSD was fast on the read, but not fast on the write. Microsoft has righted the ship here. I got a little over 1600 megs per second on the read, and now 1200 megs per second on the write. So it's way faster, and that probably accounts for a lot of the improvements that I saw while I was editing. And I mentioned using this as my everyday computer, and that means all the emails I was doing and video editing and browsing, and it worked really well. It did choke a little bit on Chrome with 8 video tabs open, where on Edge it didn't. That's certainly more of a Chrome issue than a Surface Book issue, but if you do work in Chrome and you have a lot of video tabs open, bear that in mind. The fans here also ran relatively silent when it was open being used as a laptop. When it was docked in a clamshell mode, you could definitely hear the fans kick on, but that's to be expected because the heat isn't dissipating as much as it would because it's got that monitor just slammed on top of it. So about 80% of my Surface Book usage was right here, with it plugged in and not really worrying about battery life. But I did take it home and used it as my only computer when I was traveling and at home, and that's where I really tested the battery. Microsoft is claiming up to 16 hours of battery life, and that wasn't quite realistic. Although I did get a really solid almost 12 hours with brightness set at about 80%. Now you can turn the brightness almost all the way down to black, which is nice to see, and if you do that, then you'll come close to their 16 hours. I never did. I like a bright screen, and that was my real world usage while testing. But if you decide to undock the clipboard and use that on its own, you're only going to get about 2 hours battery life just through that. There's also a lot of intangibles that come with the Surface Book. You get things like the Surface Pen, which admittedly I didn't use that much, but it does work really well. It's got different things you can do. You can tap it once to launch OneNote, long press to launch Cortana, and the back feels like an actual pencil eraser, and you can use it to erase the screen. And when you're not using it, it sticks magnetically to the side. Really nice that it does that. You don't have to plug it into a power port or anything. It just sticks there on its own. I was tough on the Surface Book, and not tough in what I tested, but tough in how I use it, because it was my only computer for the better part of a week, so I got a chance to really learn Windows. And some of the knocks I had when I did the last generation review was with Windows itself. The Mail app, for example, I couldn't find one I liked. The built-in one, it wasn't pulling an address book, so you couldn't drag and drop files. Microsoft has fixed that. That's no longer an issue. I found third-party apps for fixing things I was used to on the Apple side, like screenshots and how to automatically sign documents via preview. Things like Sear, an app with you hit spacebar to open up a document like you can on Mac OS, made this a really pleasant transition. Now, it did take me about 3 to 4 days to actually get used to the differences in Windows. Once you get past that hump, if you push through it, I really found the elegance in Windows, and I've really enjoyed using Windows 10. I think what Microsoft has is a flagship computer to showcase what the OS can do. But not everything was giant roses and wonderful. I did have a few issues, primarily with Bluetooth. My Bluetooth headphones of choice are the Bose QC35s. I think they're the best out there. But about 8% of the time, I'd get crackling, it'd disconnect and reconnect. Nothing I've had any other computer that I've tested. But it appears to be isolated to just those headphones. It might be a Bose issue. Things like Bluetooth mice and printers, I had no issues with at all. So if you couldn't tell, I've really liked using the Surface Book. I like having the power of a desktop, the portability of a laptop, the flexibility of a tablet, and be able to combine my home and work computer into one. So I asked 2 questions at the beginning. 1, am I going to continue using the Surface Pro? And 2, should you consider buying one? I am absolutely going to keep using this as my only computer. I've learned the elegance of Windows. It does what I need it to do. It's flexible when I need it to be, and I like the power that comes with it. In fact, I can see myself very happily using this for the next 1 to 2 years. Now, should you buy it, it's a different story. It's a very expensive computer. This one's jacked up again at $3,300. But if you want the best from Microsoft, from a hardware and software standpoint, I think look no farther than the Surface Book. What do you guys think about the Surface Book? Is it the computer for you? Is price holding you back? I know a lot of folks are considering making a switch from Apple to Windows this generation. If that's you, look at this. Go to a Microsoft store, go to your Best Buy, wherever you can get your hands on one, and try it. I think you're really going to like it. Now, you're gonna take a while to get used to the aspect ratio and that kind of stuff, but once you do, I think you're gonna appreciate what Microsoft has done here. Give the video a thumbs up, you always appreciate it. Let us know again if you want to see dedicated videos on gaming and video editing. Until next time, I'm John Ranger from Techno Buffalo.